Okay, I've done a bunch of these separately and talked about my favorite beginner species. I also have a blog post where I did my favorite beginner species that gets a lot of views, but I figure it's time to pull some of these together and do it all in one shot. So I have all my top beginner species on my dinner table right now. And what we're going to do is just go around and talk about the ones I think are the best for somebody just getting into the hobby. Again, this is based on my opinion. I do spend a lot of time on the boards and whatnot, so I hear what other people say, and I've definitely taken that into consideration, but I'm using my own experience as well. So again, if you have ones that you don't think should be in certain spots, any of these guys would make a good beginner tee. So I'm just kind of, in some sense, just assigning numbers to the ones that I think are the top ones. It can be in any order, really. The criteria I used was temperament, obviously, because we don't want somebody that's just getting into the hobby with a little monster on their hands. And a lot of people, hobbyists, think that they have to handle. So I usually recommend ones I think would be safer if they do try to handle. I don't encourage it, but it happens. Ease of husbandry and care. I want things that can be taken care of very easily. And cost and availability is a big factor. So enclosure-wise, these will all be set up. You'll see all the different types of enclosures you can have with them. They can be set up terrestrially, which means more floor space than height. You want to make sure it's not too high. Substrate, cocoa fiber, topsoil, anything of that nature. Peat is used often. Most of them are kept completely dry with a water dish and a hide. That's about it. So nothing fancy there, and there's no heat needed. And I got one of them trying to crawl out right now. We'll talk about that one in a minute. So to start off, the first one on my list, which I do think is probably the best one for a variety of reasons, not the one that's trying to escape right now, is a B. albopilosum or Honduran curly hair, or I believe there's also a Nicaraguan curly hair now. They are very, very cheap. Slings are often given away as freebies, and I actually have 4 of these now, and 2 of them I got as freebies. Medium growth, so compared to some of the other species I'm going to talk about, they grow very much quicker than, say, a Brachypelma species. Brachypelma smithy, and they are very, very long-lived with simple care. You can keep the substrate dry. I do overflow the water dish every once in a while, but they don't seem to prefer it. These guys, unlike some of the other ones, don't seem to fast as often, which is great because fasting can really freak out keepers that are just getting into it. I literally just had an email today from somebody who had a spider for 2 weeks and is worried because it hasn't eaten, thinks it's going to die. No, it's going to be fine. And just really, really laid back and calm at a smaller size. Some of the other species that are known to be very handleable, it takes until they get to like 4 or 5 inches, they start calming down. These guys, right when they hit about 2.5, 3 inches, seem to calm down a great deal. Just know that if you get one as a sling, they will burrow as slings, something to know about, to be aware of. But again, B. albopilosum, great species, especially for those who do have an eye toward handling. Again, I'm not promoting handling. I don't handle mine. I understand people do. That's completely fine. But if that's something you're thinking of doing, this is a good species for it. Next one I used to have as number 1, but I removed, and we'll see how it goes. But the Euwathlus species red, as I get my notes in here, I can't do all this on my head. And she's probably going to try to escape. Euwathlus species red are wonderful spiders. You'll see in a minute, they're very inquisitive. They wander. For people that are scared of spiders, they come across as cute, which I've had a lot of people tell me, especially people that got into the hobby to try to get over the fear of spiders. And they are kind of an adorable species. Out of the ones I have, this is the one I find myself handling quite a bit. I have 2 females and a male, and they kind of just crawl out into your hand. I'm sure I'll be picking this one up in a minute to try to get her back in. They don't get particularly big, which makes them less intimidating. Great attitudes. The issues I've had with them is they can be a little more difficult to find as older specimens now, and the slings are very, very tiny. People are breeding them now, so the slings are out there, but you're talking about an 1/8 to a 1/4 inch spider, and they take a long time to grow. So that can be tough for people just getting into the hobby to start with a sling that tiny. I've also noticed for mine, and having talked to other folks, that they will also fast sometimes during the winter. So that can be an issue for new hobbyists, as I'm trying to just gently get this one back in. It can be an issue for new hobbyists because fasting, again, kind of freaks people out. So I try to shy away from ones that fast a while. And unfortunately, I've had cases where these guys have molted in right before the winter and then fasted immediately afterwards, which is not particularly healthy for the spider. But as you can see, very, very handleable. And I'm not even one that handles much. And this is, I think, going to be the first time on video that I've ever handled one. Usually try not to promote it, but again, they're adorable and I have no problem picking them up. So that's Euwathlus species red, or common name, I believe, is the Chilean flame. Now, unfortunately for this one, I kind of messed up where 3 years ago I had a chance to get one, which would have looked great. and I didn't buy one, and I spent 3 years trying to get one. But the E. campistratus or the pink zebra beauty, I will try to at the end attach a picture of this, but these guys are great. Also very, very hardy. A lot of people talk about them being the most gentle spider on the market. I can't really comment on that right now because mine are teeny tiny slings. And as you can see, as slings, this one's about a ½ inch, a little less. They do burrow right down to the bottom, but a great species. The cons with this one is they can be very difficult to find right now. It took me a while to get these. I finally got some from Tanya at Fear Not Tarantulas, which was great. So I have 2 slings, and they are very, very slow growing. So it'll unfortunately be a while before I can redo this video and have a nice, big, robust adult. But again, ease of care, very, very easy to take care of. Beautiful spiders, very, very tame. And number 4, hopefully this guy's out. Gramastola pulchra, Brazilian black, I think it's called. These guys are jet black. They're often referred to as the black labs of Labrador retrievers, like the dogs of spiders, because they get big, beefy, and they're known to be very, very docile. This one here, I've had, I think I got 3 years ago when I could have gotten the campistratus, and I got it as a 0.75 inch sling. Right now it's pushing about 3.5, 4 inches, and is pre-molt now. But beautiful, beautiful spider. Very, very laid back. And the big thing with these guys is they can be a little bit pricey. Slings can go $40 to $50. Adults are in the hundreds. Males are almost just as expensive as the females because they're tough to come by. But they're gorgeous, laid back, make a beautiful showcase spider for a collection. And they get quite large, supposedly reaching 7 to 8 inches. So beautiful species, Brazilian black or G. pulchra. Next one is the hobby staple. Hopefully she's out. She is. The Brachypelma smithy, or the Mexican redknee. I think I always mess up the common names. I'll double check if I messed it up. These guys could easily be, number 3 or so. The biggest issue I have with them as a negative is people read about these big, beautiful, tame spiders, and they're pretty flighty as slings and juveniles. This one, when I got her, was about 2 3/4 inches, and she was very, very skittish. Even now, pushing 4.5 inches or so, she's still quite skittish. Hopefully she just sits here calmly and doesn't try to do anything silly. But as adults, they tend to settle down quite a bit. They can also be hair flickers. This is a species that you don't usually get a mean adult that's going to bite, but they can flick hairs. She used to flick hairs a bit. Now she doesn't do it at all. So she settled down quite a bit, but a gorgeous tarantula species, painfully slow growing. I have a sling that I got at about 0.35 inches or so. That's about a ½ inch now, and it's about 2 years old. So very, very slow growing. Obviously, if you jack the heat up a little bit, they'll grow faster, but this isn't an animal you're going to power feed or have a big adult in a couple of years. It's going to take quite some time. But again, you're going to have a slow growing tea with very easy husbandry care and a good looking tarantula. And obviously, these are one of the ones that were featured in a lot of movies back in the day, so everybody seems to know them. Actually, not even using my notes, so I'm just going to go set them over here. Next one we have is the Gramastola pulchripes, or Chaco golden knee. Hopefully those golden knees show up. This one I do believe is a male, and he's going to try to bolt, so I'm just going to go ahead and... Oh, no, there we go. This is another great species, one of the bigger Gramastola species that supposedly reach lengths of 8 inches. So for those looking for large spiders, a lot of people in the hobby are immediately attracted to the idea of having a big, bulky spider. These guys are great. They're bulletproof as far as husbandry. I raised 2 from less than ½ inch slings, and they just truck along. They can be kept on dry, completely bone dry substrate, even as little slings, and they do perfectly fine. These guys, again, are terribly slow growers, especially if you get slings. So something to be aware of. The slings are very, very inexpensive. You can usually get them $5 or $10. But I have slings now that I was going to bring them out, but I have too many spiders on the table, that I bought 3 years ago at less than ½ inch, and they're only about 2 inches, 2 1/4 inch now. So beautiful species. You can see the golden knee that gives them their name. Very easy to take care of, and a lot of people report theirs are very handleable. So something to keep in mind. Now the next one is going to cause probably some controversy because apparently it seems to be a popular thing to bash these guys now, but what I have here is a Gramastola porteri, or the quintessential rosy or rose-hair tarantula. These guys were the hobby staple for many years and considered to be the best beginner species. Part of it was just because they were readily available in pet stores. They were selling a lot of wild caught adults, so every pet store had one of these guys. And unfortunately, they've fallen out of favor over the years, and I think with some good reasons. One of the issues is their ability and propensity to fast for incredibly long periods of time. I just spoke to somebody who's had one that hadn't eaten in 18 months. Obviously, if you're keeping a pet, never kept a spider before, it's going to freak you out if your spider doesn't eat in almost 2 years. Another issue is they're said to be very, very tame. And for years, it's like, oh, these guys are the best ones in the world to handle. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. They can have what you call psycho-rosies that can be very nasty in temperament. The majority of them, though, are pretty laid back. One of the arguments I hear against them is that they are pet rocks, meaning they just kind of sit there in one spot, and they do. And I've heard people say that this will turn off people new to the hobby. I think that's kind of ridiculous, quite frankly. This was my first spider. When you're new to tarantulas, just having a giant spider in your house is amazing enough. It really doesn't need to do a lot. And quite frankly, if you start getting into some of the ones that go nuts and run around and everything, that can turn people off because it'll scare people. So I still think, because of the fact they are so easy to keep, these things are literally bulletproof husbandry-wise. They've tolerated all kinds of horrible husbandry mishaps, and they still go on. This is a great little beginner species for somebody just trying to dip their toe into the hobby. And just keep in mind that, you know, if you don't handle, you're not going to get bit. So if it's a Psycho Rosie, it's not going to be an issue. But I still love them. I recommend them. This one here is probably, I've had it 21 years, going on 22 years, and we're guessing it's probably around 30 years old or so, because it was a young adult when I got it. So wonderful species. I don't think that should be overlooked. And the next one is one that doesn't, and of course she went back. And I'm going to do something I normally don't do here, but I do want to make sure we get these guys in here. This is my Euwathlus parvus. I'm going to go ahead and just try to tease her out. There you go, girl. So I can get a picture of her. Unfortunately, she's... Oh, did she get her cricket? Oh, she's eating. She's got her cricket. I'm sorry, girl. I love the species. You don't see them very much, and probably one of the only detriments is the fact that you don't see them around a lot. They are slow growing. They have a reputation for being just a brown spider, but as you can see with that dark green carapace, the little red burst on the abdomen right in here, as I stick my hand, probably block the whole thing, and the silvery tones on the legs, they really are quite beautiful. Very laid back. Something, if you're looking for something unique for your collection, that, you know, I know a lot of people are like, everybody has a Chaco golden knees and a smithy. This is a good one to pick up, and I have had some people contact me saying that they picked them up after seeing my video, or my video of them and my guide on best beginner tarantulas, and they love them. So definitely a spider to check out. The one thing I like about these guys, they don't fast and they eat like machines. They really are great eaters. And I would say the growth rate on mine has actually been pretty good. I was kind of surprised. She's molted. I got her as about a 3.5 inch sub-adult, and she's molted 3 times in my care, which is pretty good. And I've had her for about 4 years. So beautiful spider, not one of the more common ones. So if you're looking for something a little different, so you're not just like everybody else, that's one to check out. Now, one I'm adding to my list after talking to many people, and mine's actually calmed down quite a bit, is the Brachypelma calcutus, or the Arizona blonde. Love the look of these guys. They're just one of the most cuddly looking spiders. Unfortunately, this is one that I kept off my list to begin with, because it seems like for every person that has one that's super cuddly and you can handle it, somebody's got one that will either bite or kick hairs like a machine. This one's a hair kicker. She doesn't have a lot of hair on her booty anymore because she's kicked it all off. But it is a species that is very easy to come by, very inexpensive, especially if you're in the United States. They're native to the United States. And husbandry is very easy because they're kept dry. They will burrow as slings, and know that some of them will actually burrow and kind of hibernate for an entire winter, and that's something to think about if you get this species. I just talked to somebody who got one, and they were freaking out because theirs stopped eating around November. That's what mine do. They stop eating around November and then pick up again usually once it starts getting warm. So their internal clocks are very, very good. They recognize it's the time of year where it's usually cold, so even if the heat's up, they're going to stop eating. But very, very easy to keep. A lot of people report that theirs are very friendly. Mine was kind of a kicking machine, so I waited to add it to the list, but I've talked to enough people now that recognize that this is a really good beginner species. And last on the list of the easy ones is the vagans. Let's see if I can get this one in here. There she is, vagans, another one. Now, these ones are very easy to come by again, and they are very inexpensive. I got this female for, I think it was like $55 or so from Tanya at Fear Not Tarantulas, and they are found sometimes in the United States. There's actually a population of them in Florida now. They were introduced. The only issue I have with these guys is they can be a little skittish and they're quick. As you can see, it's a little more lithe than some of the other Brachypelma species, but they grow very fast compared to some of the other beginner species. They eat like machines. I've never had this one fast. I can drop 3 or 4 crickets in it. She'll grab them all, and they're very, very pretty with their red abdomens and their reddish carapace there. So cool species and those jet black legs. So this is one that I've talked to several people that started off with one of these guys, so I thought it would be cool to add it to the list. So these are going to be the beginner species. In a moment, what we're going to do is clear the table, put these poor guys back, and I'm going to break out some of the, we'll call them, you know, I don't want to say intermediate. They're still beginner species, but there's some caveats too. So I'm going to shoot that one in a moment. So there they are. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the top. Are there other ones in there? Yes, and I'm sure I will add to them, but I try to get ones that I have experience with and that I've heard a lot about. I just took a quick break to clear the table off so we can do the final 3. These are ones that I think can make good beginner species, but there's some caveats with them, some things people need to be aware of. So I don't readily lump them in with some of the other species that husbandry-wise, they're pretty bulletproof, so they're not going to suffer for it. So to start off, I wanted to do Avicularia. I'm embarrassed to say I don't own one yet, but I have a Avicularia metallica, so we're going to focus on that. And I do think metallica is in the same league of this one. But for somebody looking for an arboreal species, there's my new girl to replace one that passed away. These guys are very, very tame. Keep in mind, though, they can jump. That's something to think about. They're kept arboreally, so you need an enclosure that's taller than it is wide. And if you notice here, I got it in a gallon jug. And you'll need to lean up some cork bark. So the husbandry is a little bit different, but hopefully, you know, when we get to the end of this point, Billy will back up so you can just see how this is set up. But these guys are very tame, very easy to come by, inexpensive. The issue I found with Avix is people read a lot of crappy care sheets out there that say they need it really humid and high humidity, and what they do is put them in stuffy enclosures, spray the crap out of them, keep the substrate really, really moist, and that's actually terrible for them. You need a lot of cross ventilation in there. I keep mine dry with water dishes. They do perfectly fine. For slings, I keep them in cages and I will just drip some water or mist a little bit on the web so they can drink, but they don't need high humidity. I just literally spoke to somebody who lost theirs, and when I was kind of asking about the husbandry and whatnot, they said, yeah, they think the humidity might have been too low. They were keeping it 80% humidity. I mean, that's like really high for the spider. So beautiful species, but they are not quite as tolerant of husbandry mistakes. So if you get one and you don't have your basic husbandry down, these can be an issue. So something to keep in mind though. So again, this is the Avicularia metallica, very similar to Avicularia. Both of them would be really good first arboreals. And then this one here is the infamous, I shouldn't say infamous, but everybody knows these guys, the C. cyanopubescens, or the GBB. Hopefully this one doesn't launch itself at Billy and scare her. These guys can be a great beginner species, but they can move very, very quickly. They will startle people that aren't used to faster moving spiders. They're a good gateway spider to some of the faster moving ones because you can deal with these guys and you can move up to some of the other ones. But it is something to keep in mind that if you're used to working with slow-moving Grammostola, Brachypelma species, even some of the faster-moving species like the vagans or the bamies, these guys really move, and they also are not afraid to kick hairs. Mine are have become big-time kickers. If you haven't had a lot of experience in the hobby and would like to get one of these, I often encourage people to start with slings. They're very, very hardy as slings. As you can see, they're kept dry. They like to web a lot. They eat like machines. It's one of the best eating spiders I have out of everything I keep. And you can kind of grow with the spider. They are fast growing, so it won't be too long before you have a spider sporting some of those colors. So I'm going to have Billy just back up for a minute just so I get ready to put this thing on. But they're a wonderful species. When I first got this one as a sling, they were literally molting every month and a half to 2 months, like clockwork, so they put on size very, very quickly. So if you start with a sling, again, it's not going to be too long till you have a big spider. So that's the GBB or C. cyanopubescens, a good starter species for somebody who's aware of the fact that they are high strung, they can move quickly, and they can kick hair. And then the last one, most people getting into the hobby can't wait to have a giant tarantula. A lot of them read about Theraphosa sturmi or the Goliath bird eater, and they want one of those, but realize the husbandry is a little difficult. So what they read next is there's a spider out there called the Lasiodora parahybana, or salmon bird eater, that can get 10 inches and is a good beginner tarantula. So here I'm going to show my female. This one is probably about 7.5 inches or so. They are fairly fast growing species. I've heard people talking about them getting 4-inch spiders in a year's time. If kept at normal room temperatures, you're not going to get that kind of growth. Mine grows pretty quick, but not as fast as, say, Panthobedia species or Phomictopus species. They do get large. You can expect to have a spider that's at least 7.5, 8 inches or so, but just know that the reports of 10-inch specimens, those are very, very rare. Again, I've stated this before, and I'm still hoping somebody can show me proof, but I've heard a lot of people talk about having specimens that are 10 inches or more than 10 inches, but nobody's been able to show me a picture of them when next to a ruler. And the last instance I had was some guy came on my YouTube page and said, yep, I got a picture of it. And I said, great, here's my email, and nothing ever came. And when I contacted him again, he never got back to me. So I got a funny feeling it wasn't 10 inches. But it's still a big, hefty spider. And know that the pros on this one is it's a very big, hefty spider, very impressive to have in your collection. The con is it's a very big spider, and they can move quickly. So for people that are just getting into the hobby that pick up a sub-adult, that's a lot of spider to have on your hands if you're not used to working around them, so it can be kind of intimidating. And no big spider equals big bite, so that's something too. If they were to bite you, it's going to hurt. And some of them can be hair kickers, and depends on your body chemistry or whatnot, but some people report the hairs can be very, very irritating. But beautiful species, very large, very easy to come by. As a matter of fact, I believe I have 4 or 5 of these now, and I think that 2 of them were freebies. So actually, I think 3 of them were freebies. So very easy to come by, very cheap, and a great addition to anybody's collection. So that's going to be it for now. I'm sure I will probably add species to this as my dogs go nuts at the car parking by in the background as time goes on. But these are the ones that I normally recommend. So hopefully for now, when people go, hey, what's a good beginner species, I can kind of link them to this video and let the video do the talking for me, because I tend to answer a lot of those questions. But here we go. These are my top beginner species. I believe we have 13 there, 12 or 13, 14 total. 13 total. There are other ones that could make good beginner species. Feel free to chime in the comments, ones you think I should consider later on.